Morning, everybody. I've just been thinking about free will and determinism and how and blame, really, because this came up talking to Jared and Linda about. I mean, it came up a couple times, I guess, but I'm just. I would tell them that I don't feel like you can blame anyone for anything because their decision is based solely on their genetics and the sum of experiences they've had in their life. And they're not responsible for either of those. I mean, certainly a baby's not responsible for kicking the inside of his mother's womb, that's completely determined by the chain of events that happened since that egg got fertilized by the sperm. And, after birth, he's not responsible for his childhood or, the way he was brought up, and that plays a huge role in every decision he ever makes. And I don't know, people have this idea that something changes, like when you're a teenager, maybe young adult, or by the time you're 30 or something, and you're supposed to be responsible for your decisions all of a sudden. I don't see where you can draw that line, because if every decision is based on your genetics and your previous experiences, it's just induction. And every future decision is based on the past ones going forward. So, I mean, really, this has to do with that accurate view of reality where we just see things as fundamental particles moving around according to the laws of physics. And everything, really, you can trace every single event through this long chain of causes all the way back to the beginning of time. I mean, the words I'm saying right now were determined by the conditions in the Big Bang. So the only thing we can really do, and it's so hard because our language is made to where we talk about choices and decisions and chance and randomness, and really none of those things exist. So it's hard to communicate these ideas, but I do think they have really big implications for the way we interact with one another. Because if you can't blame anyone for anything, then all you can try to do is change their behavior in the future. And again, that sounds contradictory because I said you can't change any behavior, it's all preset. But we don't know what the future choices, the future decisions and choices are. So we can use our illusion of free will to try to change these illusion of choices. Really, they were always going to happen, but since we don't know which one, we can pretend we're picking, and live out, I don't know, a better life, I guess. It's so hard to talk like this, but I really do think it has big implications, because you should never try to get even with someone or get retribution or punish them for the sake of making up for what they did. The only thing we should ever punish people for is to either change their behavior in the future or as a warning for other people to change their behavior. Just forget the past completely. It's just a memory occurring in the present. So, obviously there's a lot to learn from the past. Really there's a lot to learn from our memories right now, I guess. But, man, you can see how our language makes this so hard. But I guess that's the main point, is you can't blame anyone for anything, and you shouldn't feel guilty for the things you did in the past, because if you rewound the clock and played it back again, there's no way you would have done anything different. The past is set, so let's not worry about it. Let's learn from what we can and try to change the future. Again, that sounds contradictory, but since we don't know how it's going to play out, we can, I don't know, change the hypothetical ones that we imagine. We can change our hypothetical futures we imagine. Does that even make any sense? I don't know. But the main point is, we can only affect the future, so that's all you should try to affect. Don't try to get even with people. Don't try to, punish a murderer to make the murderer to get even with him. You punish a murderer to disincentivize murder for future people. And that's just the only rational way of getting justice. I mean, really, justice doesn't even matter. All we can possibly do is try to get a better future, not make the past make more sense or anything. So that's what I was thinking about this morning. Be really interested to hear what y'all have to say. I'm betting most of you believe in free will, so I'd love to hear how that can possibly fit in with physics. Period. I don't know. How can you change the movement of atoms? I mean, our brains, you don't blame, when a neuron fires, you don't think that neuron's making a choice to fire. It's just a set of chemical reactions that send, what are they called? An action potential down the axon. So, if a single neuron isn't responsible for sending its signal, how could 100 billion neurons interacting be any different? Somehow through this complex interaction of neurons, we have this illusion of consciousness, which is crazy, but it's no different. If you aggregate a bunch of determined things, the outcome is a determined thing. It's harder to predict, way harder to predict, way more complex, which is why we simplify things with the idea of choices, and because we can't look into the brain and say neuron 3748 is going to fire, and that's going to trigger neuron 68,746, which is going to, feed back around, and it's too complicated to talk that way. So we use these words that simplify reality so we can work with it easier. But we have to remember that the way we use language doesn't always reflect the way reality is. And sometimes you gotta take off your language glasses for a second and try to see the world without words, and just try to see it as this, I don't know, I kind of picture it like a cloudy, fluidy mix of just the fundamental particles moving around according to the laws of physics. And when you see it that way, you see we can't blame anybody. All we can do is try to affect their behavior in the future. So, let me know what you think. Alright, talk to you guys later.